want Republicans dead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
Well, folks, I'm coming to you today from Chicago. I am attending the Democratic National Convention. And interestingly, it's not my first Democratic National Convention. I attended two others, but I was part of a Republican spin team there to cause chaos and trouble. This time, I am here as one of many, many tens of thousands of people who have come to watch a transition in our politics that we don't often get in this world, that we don't often get to watch a moment, a generational moment like this. And what we saw last night in the first night of the convention was Joe Biden making an unbelievably powerful speech. And believe me, if that was the guy who showed up at the debate, he'd still be in the race. Honest answer. He gave a very powerful speech. He acknowledged his age, his service. He showed us, once again, his profound love of family. And for all of it last night, I think there was a sense that, Joe Biden was going to walk out there and take a sort of valedictory, a victory lap about his administration and about his time in office and about his career and his family. And that would have been a great, great speech. That would have been a great moment. That would have been a coda on an honorable and long career. But that wasn't what Joe Biden did last night. He did that in part, and that was wonderful. It was heartwarming as all get out, and I'm not crying, you're crying. But the thing he did last night was articulate a case against Donald Trump in a way that Democrats should take note of. He came out and made a case against Donald Trump that was merciless, that was crisp, that was plain and clear and correct. That case that he made last night, that intense, driving, aggressive condemnation of Donald Trump's policies, of his actions, of his character, was a through line that I really hope that not only Democrats take out on the stump, but that Vice President Harris brings into her convention speech on Thursday night, which I will be at, interestingly enough. That idea is interesting because Donald Trump is always trying to other everybody else. She's an immigrant. She's a foreigner. He's a criminal because he's from Guatemala. All these things. It's always the alienation of humanity on Trump. He has to have enemies that are so far outside of civil society, so far outside of the pale that they can be attacked or persecuted or deported or whatever it is, right? Biden did something very effective last night in that speech. Or Monday night, let me say, I think it's going to be released tomorrow. He othered Donald Trump. He reminded Americans just how far Donald Trump is outside of not just the political mainstream, but the human mainstream. He reminded people that this is a guy who is legitimately called evil for a reason. Donald Trump is a dark force, and Joe Biden called it out last night over and over and over again. He hammered him. There's nothing in that speech in terms of the attacks on Trump that couldn't be applied almost universally to this guy. I mean, Biden really gets Donald Trump at a key level. He really understands the character of the enemy, and I say that advisedly, because Donald Trump is an enemy of America. He is an enemy of this country. He is an enemy of the American people. He is an enemy of the American Constitution. He's an enemy of American rights and liberties. He's an enemy of American women. He's an enemy of decency. He's an enemy of the law. Donald Trump is an enemy at a level that that I'm really proud of the president for delivering this speech last night in the way he did. It was important that he hit the ball as hard as he could. This is the last big show, and he hammered it home. And it was interesting, the construction of the speech. I might have built the speech differently, but it worked for him because he went from talking about the achievements of the Biden administration to alternating with attacks on Trump. He went from talking about his ambitions for his last 5 months to attacks on Trump. It was a really interesting construct in the way the speech was put together. You could clip the attack sections on Trump, and I'm gonna, and make them into some pretty good ads, and I'm gonna. Thanks for the content, Mr. President. But we are seeing, just saw this contrast last night. I think that was, I think you really should, if you didn't get a chance to watch it last night, go out and watch it again. Go out and watch the condemnation of Trump in a way that it is steady, it is consistent, it is a recitation not of every single Trump scandal, but of the low character of the man to whom those scandals surround. It's not a checklist of Orange Man bad. It's an explication of the damage the Orange Man did. It's an explication of the criminality of Trump, the corruption of Trump, the contempt that Trump holds America in. And, Biden made a point that I've been emphasizing a lot lately. When Donald Trump comes out and says, we're a loser country, we're losing, we suck, we're a third world hellhole, all those things. I can't wait to never do a Trump accent again, by the way. When he comes out and says those things, he's not attacking you, or Democrats, he's attacking America. Imagine a guy who was and wants to be president again attacking the country he claims to love. Do we have problems? Of course. And Biden outlined many of them last night, appropriately, because he's talking about how we solve them together. He was talking about how we overcome the division that's been engineered into our society to do big things. And as you guys know, I'm a fan of a country that can do big things. And when you have a president like Trump who thinks we're going to rebuild America's economy by shutting down trade and closing the border and imposing weird controls over business that he likes, people who are nice to me, likes and doesn't like, versus a president like Joe Biden who outlined, I think, some singular accomplishments. I mean, the CHIPS and Science Act is bringing home and IC and chip manufacturing to this country. Guys, our supply chain, which was so stressed during COVID, our global network of tech suppliers is in Asia. Almost every one of them: Taiwan, China, South Korea, Philippines, Vietnam. Our dependence on those products is a national security vulnerability. And Biden did something in a bipartisan way that addressed it for the first time in decades. People talked about this for decades and they never did shit. He did it. He accomplished it. He built a better system because, to quote Ronald Reagan, he didn't care who got the credit. He wanted the job to get done, and he did. Biden has a speech here that I think combines the uplift of a valediction, the inspiration of a long career well served, and a clear-eyed attack on the man who will destroy all of it. Finally, I think that he showed enormous grace. Because, look, it would be easy at this point in Joe Biden's career, after everything that's happened in the last few months, for him to go out there and let slip even a hint of bitterness or resentment or anger or criticism. But he didn't. Joe Biden showed Democrats something really important. The Republican superpower for generations has been unity and team play. And a lot of Democrats have always said, like, oh, it's messaging. Messaging is a big part of it. But the biggest part of it is they stick together. When they know what the goal is, they line up and they stick together. And yes, there are some people around Joe Biden who are unhappy. I get it. I understand it. You are not wrong. Okay? You are not wrong. There were some things about this process that I think were just poor grace, like very graceless and unacceptably whatever. But Joe Biden doesn't think that. You know why? Because Joe Biden has his eye on the prize. He has his eye on the big picture. Joe Biden knows what we're up against. Joe Biden knows what we're facing. Joe Biden knows who we're facing. And so not only did he take the appropriate victory lap on a lot of policies he's been able to accomplish as president, not only did he articulate a brilliant attack vector on Donald Trump, but he also uplifted Kamala Harris. He also gave her a political lift and kept saying over and over in the speech, with Kamala, we accomplished together. The phrasing and the terms and the tone of that was really important. And it gave America, I think, a big signal that this is a unified party. This is a party that has come together in a way. And I think even Biden recognized, and it came down to his age, and it came down to the relentless 3-year campaign against him. Okay? The relentless campaign against him. It gave Joe Biden a moment where passing the torch to her, and I hesitate to use the term passing the torch because of the unpleasantness regarding a certain former colleague and a super PAC called Pass the Torch and the confusion around all that. But the fact that Joe Biden passed the torch to her in a way that was graceful and loving and kind and politically effective is enormously important in this campaign. They're not going to have daylight between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There will be no factions bitching from the sidelines, or there shouldn't be. Okay, you've gotten your direction from the president and the hopeful future president, folks. Move forward together. Now, the other speakers last night were fine. They were. I'm a Jasmine Crockett fanboy because I think she has got a postmodern kind of energy about her that understands social media. Hillary Clinton got to take her punches at Donald Trump, and I think they were pretty well done. And again, it's like you always wonder about these things. You see these people who there's a certain weird felicity in campaigning, and you got it or you don't. There are naturals in campaigning, and there are people who aren't. Okay. And sadly, I'm going to say this real talk, y'all. Donald Trump is a natural at entertaining, and as long as the campaign is about entertainment, he's on solid ground. But Hillary Clinton never had that gift. She never had that skill. She was never a big entertainer. She couldn't drive the same kind of emotional responses that Trump was able to drive in 2016. It's nothing bad about her. That's just, she's has her many merits, but that's just not a skill she had. I can't juggle. I can do a lot of other shit, but I can't juggle. Some people can't juggle. I can ride a unicycle, but I can't juggle. Half my clown points right there. See? But look, she laid in on Donald Trump on his criminality, and it was a chef's kiss because it's going to make him crazy. And I think that the portfolio folks, and Reverend Warnock is always magnificent. He's always inspirational. I think he was probably one of the best folks of the night. The logistics of the convention last night were, they had to cut a couple of speakers. Y'all, this is nothing new. This happens all the time. Conventions run late. They have difficulties. They are run by a lot of really hardworking people who are burnt out right now. They've been busting their tails to put this together for weeks and months. longer, frankly. And it stresses around the edges, okay? From everybody, from the people who are issuing the floor passes to the security guy, to the Secret Service, to the TSA, they're all working their asses off. They're all doing their best. None of them are here because of the glamour of sitting in a basketball arena with iffy air conditioning for weeks on end, trying to make this all work right. But the logistics of it worked really well on the stage last night. When they were behind the clock, they pulled some people out. I'm sorry for the people that got pulled out. That sucks. I hope they can reschedule them somehow. But you got the picture that you wanted last night. And I want to say the picture of the Bidens and the Harrises and the Walzes and the entire Biden extended family was delightful. And the idea of watching that unity, that family up there, in comparison to the weird, crapulous, shitty people that surround Donald Trump, no contest. Now, I will say this as a guy who gets emotional from time to time. Tim Walz crying broke me. I mean, that's the guy. Tim Walz is the guy who has a heart in him. And he was watching and understanding the moment and the pain Biden was in and the beauty of his sacrifice. And it was really touching. I mean, Tim Walz is, I don't know if I'm the first to say this, but I may have heard this somewhere else, but I was thinking about it this morning. Tim Walz is the guy your dad would be if he didn't watch Fox. Tim Walz is the guy your uncle would be if he didn't watch Fox. And he harks back to a certain goodness. And I keep seeing that in him time and again in these events and his speaking. And I am telling you guys, he's going to stomp the ever-loving shit out of J.D. Vance. Okay, it's going to be a slaughterhouse. But last night was the best possible kickoff the Democrats could have had, and I mean that it wasn't just a good kickoff; it was extraordinary. It was so well done. And again, if you're hearing bitching in the media like they're running 27 minutes late, okay, it happens all the time, happens every day. In every big, complex convention environment, somebody's going to be late. Something's going to go wrong. Applause is going to drag things out. You gotta understand that no convention is perfect. Nothing is ever perfect in politics. Believe you me. So with that's the first. That's my report on the big first day. I do want to talk about a couple other things really quickly before we go too much further. The first is, as you heard maybe last week, Donald Trump is threatening to sue us again. He's not going to sue us. He is a mewling coward. He is a chicken shit extraordinaire. He is the biggest walking example of moral and personal cowardice I've ever imagined. But sending out threatening lawyer letters. Donald, this is your third time against Lincoln on this. Okay, give it up, bro. Give it up. It's over. You're losing. We're going to keep kicking the hell out of you all the time, every day. Don't even play. We're not even contemplating doing anything other than laughing and pointing at you while you continue to collapse. Speaking of continuing to collapse, Trump is continuing to collapse. The numbers that we're seeing now out in the states that are starting to really solidify are showing Trump, between 3 and 7 points behind. Do not take a victory lap, anybody. If you're listening to this, do not stop writing, postcarding, calling, volunteering, door knocking, donating, etc. The work continues, and it must continue through the finish line. But what you're seeing, the key indicators of the collapse, Trump has now replaced Chris and Susie, or at least layered them with Corey Lewandowski, who is if I was secretly in charge of corrupting the Trump campaign and breaking it, I would put Corey Lewandowski at the top. It was a real moment where you saw the collapse of their predicate, and they're flailing, guys. They are flailing. It sucks to be them right now. I mean, it sucks like an industrial vacuum to be them right now. It's bad. The other thing is, JD Vance continues to poll as like the worst Sarah Palin ever. I mean, he is polling below Sarah Palin in faves, and this is not great for him. They went after Walz with everything they had. They threw all this Swift boat horse shit at him, bounced right off, didn't work. But JD continues to be a weird mofo. And y'all, I can't even, I don't even know if I can say this on a family program, but the new MAGA thing, and I don't understand the origin story of it, and I can't tell you where or why it's happening, but they're now carrying around JD Vance semen cups. I don't know what it means. I don't know why they're doing it. It's a mystery I prefer not to ever understand. And yet, JD's jizz cups are now making an appearance at all these rallies that he's doing. Oh, and by rallies, I mean he can draw maybe 50 people if he's lucky. There was one the other day where there were more staff than audience. It was kind of sad. VP audience building is very tough, but man, he was in a world of hurt. That collapse of the campaign that we're watching, the collapse of the Trump universe that we're seeing, is going to continue. And I'll tell you one of the other things that's out there in the polling right now that I'm paying a lot of attention to, and it is important to keep it in focus, is we have a lot of polling starting to emerge. We have a lot of polling starting to emerge that is showing non-college white men under 40 are starting to respond to the very simple economic message that Vice President Harris is putting out there. So the things that are moving these voters in the polls, they're very basic numbers. A $6,000 tax credit for new parents. If the Republicans want more babies, there you go. A $6,000 tax credit for new parents would make a big difference. A child tax credit at $3,900, that would make a big difference. If you offer people things like that, you're not in the ether talking about some ephemeral, weird, democratic, wonky policy thing. They get it. They're seeing the numbers. $25,000 credit for first-time home buyers. And by the way, that's not going to inflate home prices. Stop it. I know the gentry Republicans are like, this is finally something we can do and just not have the Guys, those simple numbers, those simple proposals are sending a signal to the people who were alienated from a lot of the American life and workplace for a long time because they did get screwed. They didn't get screwed by Mexicans. They got screwed by the McKinsey company coming in and telling companies, cut all these jobs. They didn't get screwed because of some evil democratic environmental plan. They got screwed because the industries they were in were dying, and no one, including the Democrats, had a solution for it. And people have this enormous sense right now, and they're not wrong, that the system has allowed the emergence of what are essentially oligopolies and monopolies, and they feel like they're getting fucked by big insurance companies. True. Big healthcare companies. Also true. Big pharma. Also true. Big tech, to a great degree, also true. Banking, also true. All these industries have resolved down to these like handful of companies that can go into Washington, D.C. with powerful lobbyists and set the economic playing field like they want. That's not the free market. I'm a free market guy. I'm a conservative. But I also believe that we have stacked the deck against working people, stacked the deck against the American middle class, and stacked the deck in a way that is not going to be solved by Donald Trump's weirdo, nationalist, populist, authoritarian horseshit. This is a really important moment because if Harris can ride the wave of these changes in the views of the economy and comes to be seen as a person who saves people from the stress and the hate and the tension inside their economic lives and shows them that there's a path to prosperity for their family, I think she can blow this thing out. I really do. Because Donald Trump doesn't have a cohesive economic vision. Put the tariffs on and the Chinese will pay. It's not going to work, Donald. It hasn't ever worked in history. And I really believe that is an understory here that is shifting the views of many, many Americans. So With that, folks, I'm going to wrap this episode up. Or it's Tuesday, excuse me. It'll be released on Wednesday, and I'll talk to you again soon. Also, check out the Lincoln Project's many pieces of content coming out of the convention for some more robust coverage and some talks with ordinary voters that are here. And we look forward to talking to you again next time. Hey, folks, do me a big favor. Also, go out right now and hit subscribe on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and hit the bell and subscribe and like. All those algorithmic things really help us get the pro-democracy message out there. And onward to victory. Let's go kick Donald Trump's ass.